In my 7 years of real estate experience and overseeing over 700 transactions, I've seen one or two things that sellers do to kind of stand in their own way. So today, I'm going to give you my top 10 things sellers do that end up costing them more money in the long run and gives them a bit of a headache as well. And hey, if you're watching this and you don't plan on selling your house for the next 48 to 72 months, keep on scrolling. It's not meant for you. But if you are, please pay attention, especially at the end, because there's a lot of information in here that can dictate how much money you make on your house if you start doing things today. Number one is not being completely open and honest with their realtor. You'd be surprised, whether intentional or not, sellers from time to time do withhold certain information, which just complicates everything. Whether it's the fact that they have multiple liens against the property, there's some type of argument between them and their significant other about the process, or even defects inside the house. Failure to give, well, your realtor this information can make it hard for them to advise and guide you. It's a lot like going to the doctors. If you're feeling sick and you need some help, you're probably going to tell them everything that's going on so they can give you the best diagnosis and the most accurate diagnosis possible. And it's the same thing with real estate. If you want the best advisement out there, then be an open book. Let your agent know everything that's going on. Now, number two, I see happen way too often, and it's nickel and diming every aspect of the transaction. Obviously, real estate, your house, is one of the most important investments you have. However, when you fight to try to save a couple pennies, you typically end up losing out on a couple dollars. This typically happens during inspections when the buyer requests certain repairs, and arguing with that buyer over a $50 or $100 repair, well, could result in you, the seller, losing out on that buyer and them walking away over something that, well, could have been resolved relatively easily, and now it's going to delay or even prevent you from being able to walk away from your house with that equity that's inside of it. So at the end of the day, rule of thumb is this: if it's going to be fighting over pennies, nickels, and dimes, it's not worth it. Number three is having FOMO, or the fear of missing out. So when you're selling your house, it should be at the right time for you in order for you to make a step in a positive direction in your life. But comparing the sale of your house to what happened during COVID, or what your friends have posted about on Facebook or Instagram, or what you see on HGTV, simply is going to cause you more stress in the long run, because you are unique, much like those other individuals in those unique situations. So you can't compare apples to oranges at the end of the day. Your goal, simply at the end of the day, is to sell that piece of real estate. Whether it's because you need to make some money, it's because you need a bigger, maybe a little bit more of a smaller house, or maybe you need it in order to move cross country in order to get that new job. Whatever it is, you need to focus on that purpose and that goal at the end of the day, not what other people may or may not have done in the past. Number four is having realistic expectations on the process. And part of this should be on the shoulder of your realtor. Being able to understand what happens in the transaction, how your house should be specifically marketed, is complicated, and that agent should help guide you through that so you can understand everything that's going to happen. But that also requires that you, the seller, have realistic expectations. If you have a single-story ranch, a 3-bed, 2-bath, you can't expect that it's going to sell for the same price as a 5-bed, 3-bath, 2-story house on 20 acres. It's simply not the case. So having realistic expectations, taking in that advice of your agent so you better understand the market, will help make this process 10 times easier for you and so much less stressful. Number five is not being prepared to make repairs during the contract process with a buyer. Now, there are some sellers that, due to financial reasons, simply could not make a repair on their house, and that's something we would talk about in the beginning of the process and potentially list the house as is. However, if you are prepared, you know you're going to need to do repairs during that inspection process with that buyer, then that's something that you kind of have to face and accept. A good rule of thumb that I utilize is typically 1% of the sale price is typically what you're going to see in the need of repair. So if you're selling a house for $300,000, be prepared that you may need to spend up to $3,000 in order to get those items fixed that would be listed as majors on that inspection report. Now, I would like to add a caveat. That doesn't mean there can't be some type of negotiation or other options when it comes to that, depending on unique situation that you are facing. However, as a rule of thumb, you need to be prepared to make those repairs. Number six, thinking the process is going to be the same like it is on HGTV. So fun fact about myself, I've been in public safety as well as being a realtor for over a decade. So when you look at shows like CSI Miami or Chicago Fire, and you're like, wow, is that how it is all done in real life? I'm going to tell you, it's not. Nowhere close. And HGTV is exactly the same. There's a lot that happens behind closed doors that you don't see. There's a lot that happens weeks and months in advance before a production team even gets there. And there's so much money getting brought into those transactions from outside resources that these things simply don't occur in the same manner, in the same time span, and in the same way as a, well, general real estate transaction occurs. So while they can be fun to watch, just expect something a little bit different when you're selling your house. Number 7 is waiting to talk to a realtor about selling your house. Now, there's a cool trick when it comes to real estate. If you have time on your side, typically the entire process is going to be much less stressful for you, and actually, as a seller, typically put more money in your pocket because you're not forced to do anything last minute. If you're expecting a realtor to put your house on the market within 3, 5, or 7 days, be prepared for your house to sit on the market even longer. There's a lot of marketing and things that have to happen behind the scenes before your house is even listed. And if you're in a situation where you have to move last minute and you knew it was coming, well, you're just putting yourself into a corner to do things or accept terms on an offer or price your house in a way that just would not be advantageous to you. Now, with that in mind, there are some sellers where things have to somewhat happen last minute. Things like people going into foreclosure, people having to deal with things like probate, or maybe there's a relationship explosion and it's just everybody needs to go their own way. Things like that happen and we can deal with them, but if time is on your side, it's advantageous. So the general rule of thumb, if you're looking to sell your house anytime in the next 48 to 72 months, now's a good time for us to talk, to make a game plan. Number eight is one I see way too often, and that is sellers repeatedly denying showing requests. It's crazy, right? You're trying to sell your house, so that means you need buyers to come in and see it. But if you deny them from coming to see it again and again, how do you expect to get an offer to get it sold? Typically, the rule of thumb is the more buyers' eyes on the house, better, because that means we can get more offers, thus you able to make more money off of your house. Now, there are times when you might have to deny a showing request, and that's completely understandable. Maybe you're sick, maybe you're running back and forth with the kids, having to get to work. All of those things are completely understandable, and we can reschedule those showing requests with those buyers. But simply going and denying request after request after request just because you don't want to have your house shown all week for no reason, well, it's going to slow down it getting sold. And if you continue to do it, typically that means your house is going to be on the market for a longer amount of time, which means you're going to lose out on more money. Number 9 is utilizing your credit during the contract process. So if you're looking to sell your house, there's a good chance you're also looking to buy. So the rules that apply to buyers also apply to you. So what does that mean? Well, don't go buy a new car. Don't go max out your credit cards. Things like that affect your credit score and affect your ability to get approved for a loan, even though you're selling your house. Sometimes it's easy to forget that you're also a buyer in the process because you're selling your house. So those credit cards, those things you see maybe when you're going up and down on Instagram or Facebook and you want to buy something and you're tempted to go maybe put that on an Amex card or your Discover card, don't do it. Resist the temptation and wait until after your house is sold and you're in your new one. And number 10 is stressing over the process. Now, I know that's easier said than done. However, consistently getting overwhelmed by every little piece that's going on is going to cause the entire thing to be overly frustrating when it doesn't need to be. So my advice when it comes to this is simply this. Reach out to your agent, have a conversation. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them. Work with an agent who's empathetic and able to listen to your concerns and help you find solutions to said concerns. And to understand this entire process happens all the time with other home buyers and sellers every single day. So the stressors you're facing and dealing with right now are probably the same that other people are. So there is a solution to what's going on. So those are the top 10 things that I see go on in transactions that sellers do that, well, make them lose money or cause them more stress in the long run. If any of this makes sense to you and resonates with you, please feel free to share this with your friends or anybody you know that's looking to sell their house. And if you're thinking about potentially selling your house or moving, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here to be of service to you, help guide you through the process, and make it as enjoyable for you as possible.